family. Appreciate you guys tuning in again to another podcast, Business Stir Fry. Used to be. Now we just the Stir Fry. At Gavin B on Instagram. At Pastor Mike Will. Please go like and follow. Please subscribe. If this is your first time, hope it's not your last time. If it is your last time, don't complain. You came here.
Absolutely. If you came here, thank you for spending time, money, whatever the fuck you did to be here. We grateful. Before we get started, I told y'all. Run the tape back. Run me my money. I told y'all. I first said it that ASAP should get Rihanna pregnant.
You did say that he should get her pregnant. I said he should get married.
And Mike said he should get married. He should not listen to the young boy on this pod. I said fair enough. And then we fast forward, and I remember telling y'all, like, yo, word is she pregnant. Now, we fast forward again.
Heartbreak all around the world,
hand
man.
claps to ASAP.
Yeah, definitely hands claps to ASAP. It look like they in love, man. So, marriage is just a contract. If they're married in their hearts, I mean, that's acceptable to me. ASAP, hey, it's both their first child, right? So that's
Absolutely.
cool. That's cool as hell, right? We're not walking into a scenario where it's 4 baby daddies and Rihanna get pregnant. So, big ups to both of them.
Absolutely.
For waiting until they found the ideal person. ASAP, I am extremely envious of you.
And Drake.
Rihanna is my Drake. Someone go check on Drake. Someone go knock on his door. Make sure he alive. But Rihanna's like, everyone's dream girl, right? Like, the homegirl chick, hustle,
pretty,
get up there, pretty, tatted.
Mm-hmm.
Natural hair.
Look crazy.
Yeah, little crazy. We let that crazy thing slide a little too much though.
Absolutely.
Fellas, if she scratch your car up, flatten your tires,
smack you in the face,
all that stuff, let her go. Let her go.
Please.
Let her go, man. And look, I know the pie is crazy. I get it. But you gotta let her go. It's some it's some healed ones out there that still got the crazy pie, and it's some women that are not crazy. They have crazy pie. Like, don't.
It's not.
Get off that roller coaster, man. It's not cool.
And nothing's weirder than when you start talking to your boys or talking to a guy. He be like, "Yeah, she look crazy."
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. But like, how normal that is though for men to date a woman that's she crazy, right? And it's like, I can handle that, right? Because I mean, when they hit you, it don't really hurt. Like it hurt when they hit you with the cast iron pan, right?
Yeah.
7 years later. But in the beginning, when she was just pushing on you and smacking you, it didn't hurt. So you was letting it slide, right? When she was popping up on you, you were just like, whatever, it's no big deal. Nah, man, all that shit is it's controlling, and we always hear it from the man side, but it happens from the woman side too. And since we are a podcast for males, like fellas, like understand that you need to let that go. Like it's not healthy.
It's really not,
and it's only going to catch you in the future.
Absolutely. I remember on the flip side, I remember talking to my homegirl, and she was telling me how a dude she was talking to, and she was like, yeah, he a little aggressive, and I like that. Like, some days I just need to be put in my place, so he just got to grab me and some shit. And I remember talking to her, I'm like, damn, that sounds so
It's going to be a domestic at some point. At
then,
some point, it's going to escalate into a domestic.
And I remember one day she said they got into it, and she said he grabbed her and was like, yo, you got to chill, because I will knock you the fuck out. And she said he scared her enough that she said we had to stop talking. She was like, because I realized like I was encouraging some actions, and he had. And
that's why I'm laughing. It's because like that, that behavior is encouraged until it goes over the line, and then you want to go it all back, or you want to say, oh, you're violent, you're controlling, and I'm not saying to excuse that for men. I'm saying as men we do that for women a lot.
Absolutely.
Like, so.
And then I remember when my dad came to me, he was like, oh, one of my coworkers was like, oh, you got one of them your son got a Puerto Rican chick. He probably like how feisty she is and fiery she is. And I told my dad, I was like, nobody ain't into that.
Nobody's into that. I mean, maybe at 16, 17, but the older you get, the less likely. What did the meme say? If you the type of woman that needs to be put in her place, you probably don't bring peace. And the older men get, the more we want peace. We want cooperation.
Yo, and stop going after the chicks. Since this is a male podcast, I'm even going to talk to the ladies. Stop going after the chicks who be making all these posts about why they single, why they can't get selected. And it usually is because I'm a great woman. I got my head on straight. I don't deal with BS. It's like, yo, nobody don't want her. Stop trying to change the narrative on her.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, so just stop sliding in the DMs, in general, right? Because when we see those posts, we like to slide in. Or when an attractive woman posts a photo, and it's on her story, right?
Yeah.
And the comment is right there. Like, I can comment right here, right? Like, stop doing that, because a lot of times it is to troll for attention, and then that's the only high that she needs for the day.
Absolutely,
because she's not gonna to respond to any of those messages, any of those texts.
Brian Flores is on a tear.
Brian Flores is on a tear, but this was way overdue. And it's funny you mentioned that, right? Because I actually I want to talk about two types of men, because there's two types of black men.
Okay.
Right? So we're going to get to Brian Flores.
Okay.
Pose is the general manager for the Chicago Bears. He was a former front office executive for the Kansas City Chiefs. He is a brother. Mm-hmm. The offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs is Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy has not received an opportunity in the NFL. Now, Eric Bieniemy has issues of his own doing when he played in the league, dating back over a decade ago, maybe 2 decades ago. Mm-hmm. There should have been enough time between the things that he has been accused of or accepted that he's done and today.
Absolutely.
But he's a black man.
Absolutely.
All right. So he doesn't get that grace. And I think Eric Bieniemy understands that to a point. Pose worked in the front office with Eric Bieniemy, right? He didn't even interview Eric Bieniemy for the Chicago job. Now, I say there's two types of black men. Here's the thing. If you have the opportunity to at least interview somebody, at least talk to them, even if it's just for appearances, because obviously they're interviewing black candidates
just for appearances.
Just for appearances, right?
For shits and giggles.
So as a black man, if you can't do that even just for appearances, what good are you? Like, what good are you to other black men? Now, there's another black man, Byron Leftwich. He was in the lead for the Jaguars job. The reason why he did not get the Jaguars job is because he told them he wanted Adrian Wilson to be the general manager over Trent Baalke. Now, we know billionaires don't like being told what to do.
Never.
So they so they pretty much told Byron, if you want to come here and be the head coach, Trent's going to be a GM. Trent's a terrible GM. As someone that followed the 49ers, I can tell you, Trent Baalke's a terrible GM. He's hit or miss. Byron Leftwich wasn't wrong. But Byron Leftwich said, hey, I'll come as the head coach, but I need you to make Adrian Wilson the general manager. There's two types of black men. Now, I'm going to ask everybody, because this is an accountability podcast. Are you Pose or are you Leftwich? Because once you figure out which one you are, we got to make sure that we put ourselves in the circles with men that are like us.
Absolutely. Because
there's a major problem. I know we start talking about the tactical retreat that black men need to start doing, right? And maybe I should use a better colloquialism. Circle the wagons, right? So when you circle the wagons, you're under attack, and it's not going well. So while you circle the wagons, it's almost your last stance. And right now, the men that wants to elevate their brothers and take care of their brothers and hold their brothers accountable, we're going to have to circle the wagons, because we're not only fighting against supremacy, we're not only fighting against the Poles of the world, we're not only fighting against our own women in our community for whatever reason, whether that's systemic racism, whether that's supremacy, or whether that's the branch of supremacy, which I call feminism, which you could disagree or agree with. That's what I call it. But when we have a battle in the front and both sides are flanked, we have to circle the wagons, because as black men, we have to make sure that we're able to hold our mental. Because if we ever get to the point where we feel like it's hopeless, then we're not even going to try, right? Most people, when it's hopeless, give up. Most people don't fight for that 0.5% chance or opportunity to win. That's just human nature.
Yeah.
When all odds are against you, fuck it, right? Fuck it. So back to Brian Flores, I wanted to mention that because it definitely seems like, that there's something going on in the NFL.
Absolutely. What's funny is this ain't surprising to nobody. I think the NFL knows it has a problem, right? Roger Goodell knows he has a problem. I think it goes back to your bigger point of billionaires don't like being told what to do.
Yeah, and I mean, so here's the thing: do the NFL know that they have a problem, or is the NFL a reflection of the greater society? Like, do they know they have a problem? I don't know if racist people like truly understand
that they racist.
I know. I think no. They know they're racist.
Okay,
because racism is fun.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're not being oppressed by it, I get that. But I don't know if they understand that what their racism causes someone else. You know, it has to be because it has to be an internalized selfishness.
Okay.
So good example of that. Last night. We were talking about, you know, we were out at a bar last night, lounge. And we were just sitting around and we were talking about, you know, again, the ideal of men practicing the fertility awareness method. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a lot of things that's fixed with that problem, right? If you could talk about fertility, you know, even if a woman says, well, you know, my ovulation date, period date, you know, it jumps around. You can buy these little fertility sticks, like $1.50 each, right? So she can actually, you know, use the stick and it'll tell her if she's ovulating or not. Yeah. Right. And then you can go and smash raws, shoot up the club, skeet up, do all that you want to do. Right. But there's a trust there. There's a trust that's going on between those two individuals. The idea that you can't do that without offending someone comes from a place of selfishness, right? Like, I get to do what I want to do. So pretty much once a man ejaculates, that sperm is just no longer his at all whatsoever. Nah. Do whatever, like, if wherever it lands, it's theirs now. The kid is theirs. The sperm is theirs. You no longer own that at all. So I was like, so there has to be a realization that a realization of men to understand it. Like, man, I need to be more disciplined, right? Which you know, like, so I got to be more selfish because that's what discipline is. It's the discipline of self is not giving myself everything that I want, right? Like, it's not giving. Now I got to be selfish with my time, with myself. Absolutely. So it goes to, like, racism. It's a selfishness to whereas I don't know if we can expect them to give it up. Nah. Like, it's a coupon, right? Yeah. you get under police, right? So you can do drugs, you can drive home, buzz, you know, because your communities are under policed. You know, if you need security, you can call for backup. There's so many benefits to this. You know, if I apply for a job and it's me and this other person and the person across the desk look like me, you know, the incentive to hire me is their comfort. Absolutely. Because it's not about money at that point, right? No. Like it's the comfort. So why would I make myself uncomfortable as a hiring president, HR director, manager, when I can make myself comfortable by just doing something that's easy to me? Racism overtly, I think it's hard to do. I think that comes from a place of hate. Okay. But racism covertly, I think it's just easy to do. Yeah. Because all you got to do is just not pay attention. Yeah. And it just exists. Turn my head. Just turn my head. Like, I think at some point we need to realize that racism is either fun or I like it. Which could be the same thing. It could be the same thing. And so let me ask you this. Do you think Brian is going to get another job? Because I find it hard. First of all, to me, I think he possibly will. But I think the two head coaching jobs, they keep saying like, oh, he's our lead candidate. I think that's just I think it's cover. Yeah, I don't think it's nothing that the NFL won't do right now, so they won't look even worse, right? So if you call the Texans or you call the Jets or whoever, and you say, "Hey, just keep saying." No one wants those jobs, man. The good jobs. First of all, absolutely. You know, would it either been the Jags job or who else was hired? I mean, Justin Fields. Like, those are the new quarterbacks in the league. Like, yeah, no one wants to go and coach the Texans. Deshaun Watson's not going to be there. Nope. You know, and you know, to a greater point, you know, with a lawsuit pending against the league. No, I mean, you know, I think Brian Flores understands that no company will hire you while you have a pending lawsuit against them. So at the end of the day, I think the NFL will cut the check. But the NFL's lost, you know, a really, really, really good coach. Like, yeah, give me Brian Flores over Josh McDaniels, right? Like he was terrible the first time he got hired with the Broncos. You know, he took the coach job, then quit on the Colts. You know, like
he did stuff that a black coach also could never do.
Yeah, and you know, like he's not the offensive genius that he's made himself out to be. You saw that this year with Matt Jones. Like Matt Jones looked okay, but you know, he wasn't world class.
Nah.
And then now he's been rewarded with the hottest franchise in the league right now.
Absolutely.
You know, the newest stadium, the highest ticket prices.
Gotta love it.
All the buzz, and he's been rewarded with that job. Now, here's the thing. As a black man, I don't expect any differently.
Nah.
Right? So even though it could be deemed unfair, it doesn't affect me to say, well, damn, how did he get that job? Poor me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it affects me daily because it reminds me of the system that I live in.
Absolutely.
So while it might not take, you know, the 50% away from my emotions, it does degrade at, you know, a small percentage every day. And when you're living in this country, and we're actually going to talk about black men's mental health today.
Mm-hmm.
When you living in this country and every day is chipping a little bit away at you, that's not an easy life.
Facts.
And no one cares.
And more news that y'all need to care about, but you probably don't. Rudy Giuliani, the Masked Singer. There's some beef. There's some people are disgruntled. For those who do not know, I don't even think it's aired yet.
It's not even aired. Yeah, like
that's the funny part.
Yeah.
Which I believe everything that happens in entertainment is a rollout in some sort of field.
Yeah,
especially
definitely rules.
Like especially with a network this big, a show this big, and I believe, hey, if it's not, I believe the Masked Singer in all these shows have ran their course, but you know, you still got to get some eyeballs there because it's a big production thing.
Yeah.
You know, and so the word is that Rudy Giuliani was unveiled and several of the castmates, you know, the judges walked
two of the
off.
judges walked off.
And here's my thing. I don't know why they walking off.
I don't either, because it's fake outrage.
Absolutely.
Because Rudy Giuliani just didn't pull up in the parking lot, threw on a costume, and ran out on that stage, right?
A lot of people knew he was there.
A lot of people knew he was there. It was a lot of boxes that was checked off to get Rudy Giuliani there.
Absolutely.
So if you had outrage, then your outrage should actually be for the company that you work for. None of those judges are quitting.
No.
Yeah, they're probably getting what, you know, $1 million, $2 million to be judges.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
not more.
Yeah.
You know, so they're not walking away from that money. So at the end of the day, your outrage isn't real outrage. And liberals are doing the same thing that they just been banging on conservatives for doing for years. Right?
Okay, which is what?
Canceling the other side, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, we're going to boycott. Conservatives, you know, picked that up from, well, everybody picked it up from the civil rights movement for the most part.
Yeah.
But, you know, well, we're just going to boycott this. You know, Cathcart want to make people get vaccinated. I'm going to burn up all my Cathcart. You know, which you're going to have to rebuy, because if you own that, you probably live in a super cold area, and they're like the only clothes that are warm in those areas.
Absolutely.
But it's like, it's this ideal of, well, I disagree with you, so I want to infringe on your livelihood. I disagree with that. I wholly disagree with that. I want racist people. I want sexist people, male and female. I want everybody to be able to say what they want to say in a public forum. I really do. Because if they don't say it in a public forum, how the hell will we know? Like,
Absolutely.
we already suspect, but you can't prove anything with suspecting. I work for a company, and I had filed an EEOC. Mm-hmm. And I knew I didn't have the evidence, but I was like, you know what, this has to go on record. And I remember she told me, she was just like, well, you need basically written evidence for this claim to actually go forward, so we can file it on your behalf. And I didn't have that. I had everything circumstantial, right? These are the circumstances, these are the dates, this is what, you know, it's he say, she say. They couldn't move off of that. Yeah. So if you want to get these things done, you have to have written proof. What better written proof than to let these people go and expose themselves, you know, online, right? If I say something on this podcast which is racist, it's out there forever. If I say something on this podcast which is sexist, which y'all try to do all the time,
absolutely,
you know, but if you go and listen to it, it's like, it's not really sexist. It's just an ad hominem attack. But you have to defend what you write or say. Why do we not want these people to write and say it? Like, where else is it going to go? I don't want them to shut down racist message board. It's the easiest place to go and see where everybody racist is.
Absolutely. I love Reddit.
Yeah. Hey, and Twitter for a while.
Look, oh my gosh.
Twitter about 10 years ago. Like, that's why I wasn't on Twitter, man. It was so freaking racist. Maybe over 10 years ago, but it was so racist before they cracked down on it.
And that's why Twitter, because they said, what? Google tried to buy Twitter too? They was trying to buy... Yeah. They were trying to buy Facebook or buy part of Facebook so they could buy Instagram and then Twitter and have them all three. And they just couldn't because it was so racist. It was so sexist. It was like, and now if you go on Twitter, they've really cleaned it up.
They've cleaned it up a lot now. Like, you can actually, like, Twitter is the breaking news source for anything you want to know.
But back in the day,
it was a Call of Duty lobby.
Look, absolutely. And you don't want those spaces to be shut down because then you start realizing, like, okay, cool. Now I know where you stand at. Or I know this is out there.
Well, and then it goes also to the narratives and the tropes, right? Mm-hmm. We can suspect something is going on, but it's a lot easier to defend that when you have definitive proof. Mm-hmm. For years we suspected that, black men were active dads. Like, we was like, I don't think every child is fucking fatherless that they're putting on, these news networks and these 6:30, news network shows and Nightline. Like, I know too many. I'm a black man. I know hundreds of black men. We're not fatherless at the rate that they're saying that we're fatherless, right? And then the CDC did the report, and nobody said anything, right? Rush didn't say anything. Glenn Beck didn't say anything.
Nope.
Silence, right? So it was like, oh, that was the truth, right? And then while we are here, right, we started out as a business podcast because we know that black men need to own their own businesses because we're only earning 69 cents on the dollar. Mm-hmm. When you're collecting a check from someone. And then we realized, was like, man, we got to start batting back some of these narratives that we're hearing in our own community.
Absolutely.
So now this season that we're trying to bat down some of those ideas, and it for the most part, it's a lot of our own community that's like, I don't believe that, or I feel like you guys are saying something that's not true, or it's a personal experience. Like, most of the time when I talk about someone not seeing their kid, I'm not talking about myself.
Absolutely.
Right? I'm talking about somebody else.
We record at different times because Mike got to get his kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Or we record at another different time because I got my kid.
Yeah, so it's like we're talking about the black experience, and then people be coming like, yo, they try to come for you. So if you put it out there, I'll be like this. I'm never offended because if you post something and it has a comment section below it.
Absolutely. You gotta catch a couple of strays.
Yeah.
You gotta live with people getting it wrong, bro.
Exactly.
Like, I laugh because even on my photography podcast, when Key was on there, Key used to always say, I get tired of going in the comments saying, hey, Gavin does not hate black women. I don't know where y'all getting that from. Because people would hear me say things, assume I was talking about black women, or when they were saying like, oh, you don't like black women. She was like, yo, I be in there defending you. Like, yo, I've never seen him disrespect or treat a black woman rude ever. And I'm like, yeah, that happens. And then, here, oh, y'all might be mad because you ain't seeing your kids or blah, blah, blah. It's like, Mike could say, Gavin, yo, we got to record at this time because I got to pick up my son from school. Okay, Mike, I can't be there because, my wife she's doing whatever and I got my boy. Cool. Mike, we have done this podcast with your son in the room. You know what I'm saying?
Without cursing, and not this season, by the way.
Absolutely.
Oh, speaking of that, Mom, she said we curse way too much and she cannot listen, and we need to unspicy the podcast. I'm gonna try to temper the cursing down, Mother.
Yeah, Mom.
But we're gonna talk about the relationships and the sex, Mom.
Absolutely. Funny enough, before we go, I was at a wedding one time. And a preacher had came up to me and he was like, yo, man, I like your pod, blah, blah, blah. And my wife jumps in and goes, I'm so sorry about the language. I'm so sorry. And I looked at him. I was like, yeah, bro, if I would have known you was listening, I probably would have just cut out half of it. But hey, sometimes you got to drop a F-bomb.
Yeah, sometimes. So we'll try to clean it up just a little bit for the moms out there.
For the moms out there, our moms.
That are listening.
Well, what's getting cleaned up is Spotify. People leaving. Podcast is getting removed. They are upset with Joe Rogan. Now, before we dive into that, I want to elevate the conversation midway through, but afterwards. But we have to talk about how people get in bed with people knowing what they're getting, and then when the outrage come, they got to pick a side. So I would say that to say, because Joe Rogan, Spotify, have they removed his podcast from Spotify?
No,
and I don't think they're going to. They gave this man too much money.
I hope they don't.
Absolutely.
And here's the thing: I don't listen to Joe Rogan podcast.
I don't know nobody that does,
because I can't listen to 4 hours of podcast. Right? Like Absolutely. Even I can't even play it as background, because since it's not visual, that means I got to listen to the whole thing, right? So I can't pick up on context clues. I can't read lips. It's not like playing Netflix in the background while you working. So it's like, okay, I can't even listen to it because it's 4 hours. Like I can't pay attention.
Wait. You watch shit in the background when you working?
Yeah, man.
Oh hell no.
Like I have to have white noise going of some sort.
Man, when me and Mike get a co-working space that's only ours, I would not be in the room where the TV is on. Yeah, I won't work at all.
Yeah, like I have to have something going. I have to have white noise going on. But like, so here, I mean, with Joe Rogan, the podcast is under society and culture, right?
Absolutely.
It's not under self-improvement. It's
entrepreneurship, health.
It's society and culture. And if you are offended at Joe Rogan, then you need to look at society and culture, because that's what it's about, right? If anything about Joe Rogan's podcast is offensive. And I've watched clips. I mean, he's had on people that I wanted to hear from, but I can listen to someone and not agree what they're saying, right? Like, it might be just like, I want to hear this 3 seconds of what Candace Owens going to say, right? Doesn't mean I agree with Candace Owens, but you know what though? I need to hear a black non-intellectual comment on something, Absolutely. Right? So it's like, all right, let me listen to this. I might listen to a piece from Jason Whitlock. I don't agree with Jason Whitlock, but I still need to hear what that side is thinking.
Absolutely.
You guys got to understand this. There's no other way to get information from someone than to listen to what that person is saying.
Absolutely.
Because everything else is just going to be an assumption. Joe Rogan, to me, Joe Rogan can say what the fuck he want to say. And anybody who want to listen to Joe Rogan can go and listen to Joe Rogan.
Absolutely.
The idea, and here's the thing. If anybody want to leave Spotify because Joe Rogan is on there, you're free to do that. What you're not free to do is to cancel out people's freedom of association. And we don't hear that a lot. We don't hear that term a lot. We hear freedom of speech. Freedom of association is also another right that's under that, which means I am free to associate with anyone that shares my cultural, religious, or moralistic views. I am allowed to associate with that person. All right, to say I want to infringe on that person's liberty, which when you're talking about someone's earning potential, you're talking about their ability to live and provide for themselves and their families, you're removing their freedom. All right, so you're infringing upon their liberty. At any given time when you are infringing or encroaching upon someone else's liberty, you are at fault.
Absolutely.
That person is not at fault, whether you agree with them or not. And I get the whole COVID misinformation. It was stupid. I get it. And here's the thing on this. If companies want everybody to get vaccinated, this is all you got to do. If anybody listening, you run a business.
Okay.
This is all you got to do. Hey, if you're vaccinated, you don't ever have to come into the office. You can work remote from home forever. If you're unvaccinated, you have to come into the office. You do that right there, vaccinations will go through the roof.
Absolutely.
Because that's the fear of missing out, right?
Yeah.
And when people like, well, shit, I want to work from home too. I guess I'll go get this stupid ass vaccine. But when you give everybody the same thing, there's no incentive for anybody to get better. It's why we talk about why racism won't ever get better, right?
Facts.
Everybody gets the same thing. All black people are going to get shitted on, to a degree.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a whole set of black people who don't get shitted on.
Absolutely.
Everybody's getting the same thing. You have to create an incentive to make people say, all right, what's the incentive in not being racist? One of those incentives would be if blacks actually had economic bandwidth and power. If blacks actually own 3 NFL teams or 2 NFL teams, if black actually own, a state or two and that had the best beaches and the best food, then you would start seeing people be like, well, they're not that bad, right? If every time you mess with, a black person the way that the Jewish community rallies around itself, right? When, hell, me just saying that could get this podcast removed off of Spotify because that's how much power that community has. Absolutely. So if we could get to the point where we own shit, and I get it, it's hard because every time, let's put it this way. black resistance is seen as violence. And this country has allowed that to be the case, right? Like if when black people were in the period of Reconstruction, they weren't hurting anybody, right? But they were doing well, and they did not need anybody for their communities because they were the people who was fixing everything, prior to being free. They were the cooks prior to being free. They were the engineers prior to being free. So in this 10-year period, it was a self-sustained movement. All right. When that, well, you don't need me anymore, it's seen as just a resistance. And when you say, well, that's violence, right? And don't say it wasn't violence, because if it wasn't violence, you wouldn't have had a terroristic organization form itself with the permission of state, local, and federal governments to terrorize those individuals. So as long as your resistance is seen as violence, you're always going to be in this place of, well, shit, can I make it to the top, right? Yeah. Can I buy an NFL team? Or will it get to a point the moment I can afford an NFL team, now everyone is going to say, well, what's in his past? Yeah. What has he done? How is his taxes looking? Right? Like when you get to that point and it reminds you that, damn, my being, my just existing
absolutely
and not needing you is a resistance to you, right? Because I don't need you and you're finding that to be a resistance and you respond to resistance with violence. I don't know, how do you survive in that type of society?
So bring this, going back to Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah.
My problem is people leaving Spotify because they mad at him, his takes, his views. Okay, cool. You can, like you said, you can leave. My problem is like, we're going back to this cancel culture, and y'all knew what Joe Rogan was before. Before he got on Spotify, he hasn't changed anything from being on Spotify.
No.
He's the same guy when he was on his own platform. Spotify just gave him $100 million to talk it only here. You know what I'm saying? And I've seen a couple of episodes, not full episodes. I've seen a couple of minutes of several episodes of his show. And, if you ever watch the show, it ain't really him talking. It's his guests talking, their opinions, supported, educated or not, whatever. Yeah. They just spewing off at the mouth. He gets the views, he gets the clicks, and that's where we at with it. And now you turn around and the expectation that, he needs to be removed from Spotify. For what? For Apple to give him the same check?
Well, I mean, and here's the thing. It's not Joe Rogan's fault that there's a segment of society that sees him as an intellectual.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
The guy who was a comedian that I really haven't seen anything funny from him. The guy that hosted Fear Factor. The guy the guy that was on MMA.
Yeah.
If you see that guy as being the beacon of, the Library of Alexandria, that's not a him problem.
That's a you.
That is a societal problem. Like, why does society, why do they cling to that versus clinging to actual intelligent people? Well, not to say Joe Rogan isn't intelligent, but I don't think he comes off as an academic.
Absolutely.
So
he doesn't. I don't think he sees himself as a scholar.
Exactly. So I don't understand. Like, the blame on him is, you're not really mad at Joe Rogan. You're mad at all the idiots that think Joe Rogan is an expert. So you're misdirecting your anger.
Absolutely. Because if he was saying stuff and the consensus was, this is funny, we all watching it because it's funny, it's stupid, then y'all wouldn't be wanting to get him canceled.
No, not at all.
Because people believe it, y'all upset. So we got an interesting show today.
It's interesting, the word, man, because
well,
what we're going to discuss here is we're going to discuss black men mental health today. And I don't know if we really, I think we've tap danced around it this season.
Yeah.
But we haven't really discussed it. And this is the reason why I want to discuss it.
Okay.
We mentioned the Antonio Brown thing, and I was gonna bring that in today, but I'm not. And the reason why I'm not gonna bring it in is because people can't separate the mental illness from the man, which I won't say is unfair, but I will say it's a bit unfair.
Okay.
Right? Because it goes back to, we can't wait for the perfect candidate to sacrifice themselves for us to say, okay, well, now we see your point. Because when we have had the perfect candidate, no one still cared. Like, at the end of the day, I feel that, everyone, the Tamir Rice story should terrify us as a country. Like, that should have been a turning point in this country. And it hasn't been.
Nah,
it hasn't been a turning point in this country. So and that was actually a physical death. That is actually, you can see it. So when we're talking about something you can't see, like mental health, that was going to be a bad example. So what I did want to bring up is I think a lot of us saw the meme of it was made by Daphne. I don't know if anybody followed her, but it was the Tyrese meme.
Okay.
And so basically it was Tyrese at the top crying because he can't see his daughter.
Yeah, that was a bad one.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, it was a bad one.
He was a bad one. The rest of them I got.
Yeah, the rest of them I got. But the point was is that I believe if you're crying on social media, it could be assumed that you're suffering about something.
But all right. Her whole post, it was Tyrese, it was Antonio Brown, it was...
And Will Smith. And this isn't a defense of that post, but what I want to bring up is the way it was seen is this is how it's outwardly viewed by individuals.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was said was one of the comments was men seeing themselves as victims, and this is from a man. Men seeing themselves as victims are comical. All right. And then, and I was like, well, that's not what this meme is about. This meme is not about women at all.
Yeah.
So that's a projection. So as a matter of fact, I'll read the comment. I'll read it exactly. If he hasn't deleted it.
Well, he probably got his ass lit up, and you gotta go when you say that.
All right, so it says, okay, of course, no memes have ever been created about women breaking down. Seeing men trying to be the victim is amusing, right? And, I was like, well, it's a whataboutism because it's not even mentioning women. And it's a false equivalency because we're comparing to something that didn't exist. So this was the comment here. I took the context clues from your other post, the Stir Fry account.
Okay.
Comments and podcast clips that reek of, if not outright misogyny, then at least the persistent resentment towards women ooze male victimhood, right? So something about me is something that you said earlier, right? Getting it wrong, right? Like sometimes, yeah. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I've gotten it wrong. So I went through the last 10, posts that we had on the page, and not only did I go through the last 10 posts we had on the page, 2 of them was big up in women. It was one there for the young lady that became an LPN while in high school, I believe in Illinois. Mm-hmm. And it was another one about the first woman that was ever drafted, that was actually drafted to the NBA in the 1970s.
That we never talk about.
That we never talk about, right? This is on our page.
Absolutely.
Right? But here's the thing. Because there's an ideal that black men can't be victim, here goes a man that's not a black person, that feels like he is going to defend women, right? So here's the thing. Victims in the context of relationships to women, because that is what I read and hear you talk about most exclusively, many of whom are black women, right? So he's thinking he's there to defend black women.
Well, I gotta save him,
right? You know what I'm saying? Like, here I am.
Here I am. Pick me.
So we're here talking about black men. We're here talking about mental illness, and is it safe for men to share, how they feel, right? Are men derided or are they uplifted, right? And the whole point of the post is that most of the time when men share something, they are going to be derided.
Yeah. Is
that fair? Like, can we fix the problem of mental illness in the black male community if anytime a black man shares anything, he's laughed at? All right? Now, mind you, that was a man, right?
Yes.
He was defending black women. Now, when he posted that, I was annoyed because I was like, you know what? I do a lot to try to make sure I'm not misogynistic.
Okay.
I was like, on this podcast, I don't feel like we ever talk down to women. I feel like we actually talk to men.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that we always tell men is that a part of masculinity that is oftentimes left out is the grace.
Yes.
And is the care.
Yes.
Right? Like, if you pick those things up in masculinity, you change your understanding. You actually, your chauvinism actually starts to come down because you understand it's your responsibility to care, right? It's not the other person's responsibility. That's your responsibility as a man to actually care. But I want you to know this person thought that they was right. So I'm in another group, which is mostly, like Carolina colleges in the area, whatever. And mostly everybody's in Charlotte. I say that group's probably 90% black. And I'd say probably 60% easily college educated. And A black woman posted the exact same meme. So she saw what I saw and she posted it in the group. I didn't post it. She posted. And here's women coming. Here's black women actually talking for themselves. They don't have a pick me talking for them.
Yeah.
Where do we break the cycle? I fight with family and friends about self-care and mental health. This is another lady. This is sad but so true. Break my heart. Another lady. True. Another lady. Agree. Another lady. No lies. Another lady. Agree. Now, these are black women speaking up for themselves. I just went through the thread, right? And herein lies the problem when it comes to black men and mental health. Everyone knows it's an issue in our community.
Absolutely.
All right? But the problem in our community, right? We talked about the 2 men at the beginning of the podcast, right? You got your Byron Leftwiches and you got your Poles. In our community, we have agents or ops.
Absolutely.
That's what they are. That's what they are.
Go ahead.
Let's stop pretending that that's not what they are. And these men will use ad hominem attacks, and they will actually and they will try to use the appeal to authority that I am here as the guardian of black women because you as black men have done such a poor role at doing it. And they'll speak on behalf of black women. And you will hear it and you'll be like, all right, well, let me take a self look at myself. And then you have a black woman come behind and say, and this is why black women are needed. This is why you will never hit this podcast, red pill it to death, because we need our women to come in to reaffirm what we already know, right? That black men mental health is not being taken care of. All right. And the reason why I want, and so it's a couple of things I want to bring up. Same Daphne, she posted a poll and she was like, men, do you talk to anyone when you're experiencing mental health? It was 80% no.
Yeah, I believe that.
Like only 20% was actually going to see a therapist or anyone. And then when I pulled up the stats on it, let me see if I can pull up the PDF file. One of the things that it actually showed was that nationwide, this is from CDC 2017, only 1 in 3 African Americans who need mental health receive it. That includes women. Amongst men, the rate was actually among black men 24.6% of black men.
So less than a quarter.
Less than a quarter. And here's the thing. To your contemporary, right? Because we always have these questions of masculinity. Non-people of color, men, go at a rate of 45%. Right? So the image that is portrayed on TV, you know, that of these strong men that do not need any help, they're almost going to therapy at a rate of twice. You know, of black men. You know, maybe not twice, but 70-80% higher. And I think we need to hear that because I think we think that we're the weak ones, despite the fact that we're under constant stress. But a problem with black men going into therapy is persistent racism that exists. Now, and racism doesn't always have to be overt, right? Like I don't mean racism in the sense that
can't go.
You can't go. I mean racism in the sense that there only 4% of the industry look like you.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So not only do you have to find a black man that looks like you, but also you have to find a black man that actually feels the way that you feel. So it can be relatable. Yeah. Because we already know between the Byron Leftwich and the Poles that there could be a black man there
who don't think you need to be there.
Yeah, right? Like your issues have to do more with your lack as a man than it has to do with the society that you live in, right?
Absolutely.
So there is a ton of shit. It's a ton of roadblocks, if we just being honest.
Absolutely.
Just to go and get the mental help. All right. Second thing is black men are no longer really in religious organizations anymore. Right. So at one point in time, it wasn't that you went to your pastor, but you had a kinship of men. Right. So you had, the older men. Right. So if you was a 40-year-old man and you was going to a church and there was a 60-year-old man there, a 70-year-old man there, 80-year-old man there, a lot of time the older men would just pull you to the side.
What's going on? You all right?
Yeah. What's going on, brother? Hey, I ain't really hear from you today. I haven't really talked to you. What's going on? We don't really have those environments no more. And then even in the black man space, we're not really holding each other accountable because we're red pilling it and we're talking about everything that women are not doing.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes me, it brings me, I was listening to Joe Budden podcast not Joe Rogan, but Joe Budden. And so I'm listening to his podcast, and one of his episodes is titled "Where are the Men Meetings?" And they start off the first beginning of that podcast talking about how he's, you know, Joe had his first son when he was like 18 or whatever, and he has like a 5-year-old now in his 40s, right? And he's talking about how even his oldest son, he realizes like there's a disconnect sometimes.
Yeah.
Just generational things, right? And, you know, he's saying that how he doesn't understand why his son, you know, he's glad his son is at college, his son is pledging. And Joe was like, when I was his age, Pump It Up was on the radio.
Yeah.
Like, and so our lives are so different. And he was saying that they was talking about how men, and they had this discussion about, yo, do you open up the door for your girl? Do you step on the outside when y'all walking? Do you pull out her chair? And they were saying, and so the beginning of their podcast was like, where are the man meetings so that our generation, the younger generation, and even the older generation can all come together and say, no, this is what men need to be doing. And so that's bringing me to, so to make it a circle, I remember, you know, growing up in church, I just remember those times where older cats was pulling my dad to the side just to be like, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And, you know, my dad, I was always thinking, I'm like, why are you even talking to him? My dad was, and, you know, he would always break down to me. He's like, look, they got something. No matter how uneducated you may think they are, they have been through some stuff. Sometimes they can look on your face and know that you're going through something.
Exactly. Or the interaction between you and your wife, or the interaction between you and your kid, right? And it's that ideal of, hey, I see something going on here. Hey, let me walk into it, or let me address it. Yeah. Last night we was leaving the lounge, and I was out there talking to one of my boys, and we were just catching up, actually talking about, you know, like fatherhood and you know, things of that nature. And there was a group of young black men down there that was walking back to the party bus. You could tell they was inebriated. And it was like 3 dudes, and it was like 1 dude across the street. And like they started like going at it, right?
Yeah.
You know, fight about to break out. And as they're going at it, you know, they're lobbing the "I'll kill you" threats.
Yeah. And
like, you know, dude is like reaching at his waistband, and like, you know, my homeboy, he from the burbs like you. So he's getting nervous or whatever, right? And you know, and I you know, I'm from the Midlands, right? Like they film live PD in the Midlands. Right?
Absolutely.
So it's like, you know, that wasn't new to me. It has nothing to do with me. But, you know, as they start simmering down, I see the guy across the street, you know, he starts like walking away, you know, and they're yelling, yeah, you know, you better leave, pussy, you about to lost your life over this and all that. And, you know, and I don't address them because the testosterone is through the roof. But my boy he was like, man, you want me to take you to your car? I was like, nah, I'm going to walk through it. And I was like, because I know as a man, being calm and just walking through it while these men are separating, that, like, you know what, somebody's here now, right? There's a witness here now. Yeah. Right? And being a black man, he's not going to say anything. You know what I'm saying? He's not about to call the cops. But you know what, though? We probably need to simmer it down. A citizen is walking through it at this moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, there's an older man walking to his car. And I knew that would happen. And what was funny is, when I looked down the street to the brother that was like walking by himself, he broke into a jog, and I was like, yeah, they was serious. Yeah. Because, you know, you be bad when they right there. Y'all dudes got to cut that shit out with your pride, man. That pride will cost you a lot. But I see him break into that jog, I was like, yeah, he know them. He knew. He getting out of there.
Yeah, he knew that. All right. Okay.
But
they're coming together.
I know. But back to the mental health thing, though. We talking about, you know, as men seeing older men, right, and seeing them in their element. And having someone that can say to you, you know, hey, I've been through this. I've dealt with this. You know, we got through it, right? Sometimes all you need to know is just that it's possible to get through it. Absolutely. Sometimes you think it's impossible, and you talk to somebody else, and they was like, nah, we dealt with that, believe it or not, and yeah, we were fine. Yeah. You know, but if we don't have those kinship circles anymore, then we're going to have to start going to therapy. Absolutely. And I think that if we understand, like, if we look at ourselves and we like, man, you know, I don't really want to go to therapy because of whatever reason, the stigma. And the stigma is actually legit. I'm going to talk about that in a sec. Yeah. But maybe if you knew that half of the other side is actually going to therapy, you know, that it'll destigmatize it a little bit and let you know that, okay, maybe I should have my butt in therapy too. And that's the truth. 25% for us, 45% for them. They're getting the work. They're doing the work. You know, so we need to do the work. Look, if you could be 70% active fathers and not be married and not be receiving mental health, imagine what you would be if you actually married the women that needed to be married in our communities, and lived in the house with your kids, and went to therapy, right? Like, imagine what kind of if we're still getting a C- in the class, right? Because we're being graded on the curve. Everybody else is worse, right? If we could still do that with those problems, imagine what we could be if we fix those problems, and then imagine the example we'd set for this country. If you want to save this country, look. There has not been any major change that has occurred in the United States of America without black male resistance. Black male resistance through the ending of the abolition of slavery. I mean, you can go back prior if you want to go back to the wars that was fought on the continent. But if we just want to get to the United States, you know, if you start with the Stoner Rebellion, that was the start of the abolitionist movement. Those uprisings, rebellions, you know, became, you know, where the abolitionist movement started, you know, really catching steam. You know, when you go through the ending of the enslavement of Africans. I hate calling it slavery. It's enslavement because Africans were enslaved. The etymology of that word is Slavonic. That was a subservient people. That was never the tribes of Africa. But anyway, you know, forget the history lesson.
History lesson.
Yeah. But if you go through Reconstruction and the freedom that was offered in the communities, because black communities are traditionally matriarchal, like that is the kickoff to the suffrage movement. You know, if you want to fast forward through the civil rights movement of, you know, the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, that is what preceded the revolutions in Africa and the freedom movement of the 1960s and the Civil Rights Act. Like, these are the things that kick it off. It was the Civil Rights Act and, you know, the stand up of Dr. King, you know, and his subsequent murder that kicked off Title IX, because even though the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964,
did nothing.
Yeah, did nothing.
Did Dr. King, for white women.
Yeah, it was Dr. King's death, but they still couldn't get it passed until they added Title IX. So the Title IX came from it's the daughter. It's literally the daughter of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So at every turn, whenever there have been a movement in this country for change, for social change for the better, that has been kicked off majorly by black men with the support of black women. So it's in you to create the change. If we actually want to save this nation, part of that is going to be us becoming mentally fit and better. Now, the stigma behind not going to counseling is, you know, one, it is attributed to the apartheid for a good bit of it, because when black men was going to get treated in the 1960s, it was a book that was written by some professor. I think it was in 2012. I forget the name, but I was reading up on it when I was researching for this pod. Most black men were seen as schizophrenic, right? So if you was to go during the apartheid for mental issues, right? Like, yo, I just want to sit down and talk to somebody. I think I'm going crazy.
Yeah.
They were automatically labeling you as schizophrenic. All right. Those men had children in the 80s and 90s. All right. So they weren't getting mental help. They're not telling their children to go get mental help, because I don't want my children to be labeled as schizophrenic, right?
Absolutely.
And then those kids are now the generation of today that we're in this place where we're not getting the help that we need because of the way that black men were perceived when going to get mental help when it first came available for us.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a reason why it's 25 and 45, right? It's not,
absolutely.
It's not no reason. It's not macho, right? It is not masculinity. So just to give a little bit on that. Now, addressing the masculinity. Y'all know on this podcast, we always tell you that masculinity is grace, it is mercy, and it is caring, right? We always tell you that. So I was reading this article, and it said that, in addition, therapists should always be aware the issues of racism and masculinity can intersect in complicated ways. Now, it says black men may internalize ideals that they should be good protectors, providers, or role models. But if you're in a system that oppresses you or make it hard for these beliefs to come true and your access to fulfilling them, it creates stress and frustration. Now, that probably sounds familiar to a lot of us. But it's one of the reasons why I want to build on the idea of masculinity going beyond providing and protecting. Because even if you're in a system where you can't provide the way you want to, right? You can't protect the way you want to, all right? If you understand that it's also upon you to be grace and merciful, right? If you could do half of the other half and you can do 100% of the other half, you pass. And if we understand that masculinity encompasses the whole man, right? Not just the burly man that could come in and throw a problem over his shoulder and take it out of the room, but also the ideal that men can care. If we understand that that's the whole man, it'll make us feel better.
Absolutely.
I guess at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to say. It'll make us feel better. And if you feel better, you perform better, right? What do they say? Look good,
feel good.
Feel good.
Absolutely.
And that's all I got.
That's all you got? Mental health is interesting because with men, it doesn't benefit society with black men fixing their mental health. Black men addressing, confronting, and ultimately fixing and working on their mental health brings families back together, brings, it elevates education wise, financial wise, brings unity. And then what ends up happening is shit start changing that society ain't ready for.
Exactly.
And one thing is, I encourage everybody, we always said, look, everybody mentioning therapy, nobody ain't going. I encourage everybody to go. On the photography podcast, we had a therapist on, and her biggest thing was, she said she noticed in her field when she talks to people of color, like, hey, why aren't you in therapy? They have this weird stigma that it costs too much.
Yeah.
And she said, it's the worst thing ever, she said, as a therapist, when I sit with people and I hear it costs too much. And then I ask them, how much does it cost? And they say, I don't know. And she said, it's tough. And she said, sometimes I just want to let them know, like, look, you might not can go to the bar twice a month.
Yeah.
If you just can say, hey, I drink at home for twice a month, you can go see a therapist. And she was like, that they don't put that together. You know what I'm saying? She said, maybe you can't eat out 2 or 3 times that month. You can come see me twice. You know what I'm saying? And so she was, and her biggest thing was like, look, seek help, do your research. And if you want somebody of color, there's a whole organization. Damn, I wish, I put it in, look in the description. Cause I do want to link, and there's a whole network of black therapists that you can go. And I will put it in.
Yeah,
in
definitely.
the link.
Yeah, definitely do that.
Because I think it's important. And even though, the link is going to be black therapists, and I think they're all black women. However, that's just because of the network that she's a part of. If you contact one of these ladies, I'm sure they can point you in the direction of the link for black male therapists.
Yeah, and that's understandable. You shouldn't think that they'd be offended by you asking that, because
absolutely.
There's definitely a need for black male therapists. And and again, if you find a black male, you don't have to stop there. Find one that relates to you.
Yeah.
And if you on that, to piggyback on that, if you work a job, you have EAP, right? And I think most EAPs are either 3 sessions or 6 sessions or whatever. But here's the thing, it's 3 or 6 sessions per issue. So if you go in there and say, I have an anxiety for work, and then at the end of those 3 sessions, you can say, hey, I'm having anxiety with my girlfriend. And then at the end of those 3 sessions, you can say, I'm having anxiety for whatever it is, right?
For this podcast.
Yeah, for this podcast. This podcast is terrorizing me, right? Whatever it is, they'll add it on, and you can keep that on the company's dime and not come in your pocket. I don't know if you're going to find a black male therapist, since they're only 4% of the whole pool of therapists. But if you do look up and find that, that's a way to kind of skirt around it. Another person that I listen to a lot is Dr. Stevenson. I can't remember his first name. His brother's Brian Stevenson. I know his name, and you probably know his name because that's the guy who did the documentary The 13th.
Okay.
So
yeah,
and
I can't think of his name. That's a great documentary. By the way.
But Dr. Stevenson, his brother, I actually like his brother better. His brother is actually into like the ideal of the social science of racism. So if you ever got some free time and you want to go on YouTube, look up Dr. Stevenson racism. It should pull right up. But something that his brother said though was, he was like, the South lost the Civil War, but they won the war of ideology and the tropes of black people, right? Like they won that. They won a narrative on race. That's how he put it. So he was like, they lost the Civil War, but they won the narrative on race. And one of the things that we're trying to do on this show a lot is trying to change those narratives and at least own our own narratives.
Absolutely, man. And with that, man, we want to thank y'all for tuning in, and we're going to catch y'all next time.
Holla at your boy.